Good afternoon. I am Robert Costrell, a professor in the Department of Education Reform here at the University of Arkansas, and I'm here with my colleague and founding chair of our department, Jay Greene, to discuss his new project, the Global Report Card. He has a piece in the forthcoming Education Next that tells us about this project and some of the key findings. The title is, it's got a provocative title, When the Best is Mediocre. The piece is co-authored with our former graduate student, Josh McGee, who is now out in the world as a vice president of the Arnold Foundation in Houston, doing changing the world for the better. So let's talk about your piece. First, what is this project all about?
Sure. Well, as you said, this was something that I did with Josh McGee, that we did with the sponsorship of the George W. Bush Institute. And what we did was we tried to devise a method for measuring student achievement in nearly every district in the United States against a set of 25 developed countries so that we could facilitate an appropriate comparison. Right now, state accountability tests encourage comparisons to other schools in one state, but really the relevant comparison for many districts in the U.S. is with student achievement all over the world.
Well, this is kind of a tricky business, isn't it? Because you don't have individuals in France taking the same test as individuals in Fayetteville, do you?
Right, we don't. And so what we have to do is translate achievement across actually 3 different tests. So we have state test results for almost every district, and we know where school districts are then within a state relative to other districts in their state. And then we know where the state is relative to other states based on NAEP, the National Assessment of Educational Progress. And then we know where the U.S. is relative to other countries based on PISA, which is a test administered by the OECD. And using these 3 different tests, we're able to basically shift the distributions so that we can make a comparison between the performance in each district and that of a set of 25 developed countries.
Seems pretty clever. So tell us, what are some of your most interesting findings?
Sure. Well, I mean, the beauty of this kind of project is we've created this interactive website that's up at globalreportcard.org, where you can look up any district you like. You can download the whole data set. You can sort it in any way you like. And there are, an endless number of stories that one could tell once you have this information. But the story that really stood out to us, and the one that we wrote about in the article in Education Next, is that many of our most affluent suburban districts, places that we think are kind of refuges from the ills of urban education, many of them didn't perform very well compared to international peers. They clearly do better than their urban neighbors, but compared to students overseas, they're barely performing at the level of the average student. And given that these are some of our best prepared students, most advantaged students, we were surprised to see that they weren't performing near the top of the ability and achievement distribution overseas.
So you're telling me I spent top dollar on my kids in the schools of Brookline, Massachusetts. I was wasting my money. I should have instead moved to put them in school in Canada.
Right. Yeah. Canada does very well. It's a little far to move to Canada, and you have to be prepared for climate change as well. Okay. But I think the part of the problem in education reform over the last several decades is that it's been perceived as a problem of urban schooling, and so suburbanites who are often much more politically influential and politically involved haven't seen this as an issue that really affects them. So suburbanites have been interested in trying to help out those poor kids who live in cities and they wish that things would be better for them, but there's really a limit to how far they're going to go to change things in the hopes that it will improve things for other people's children. I think what the Global Report Card really makes clear is that quite often it's the suburbanites who need to be interested in school reform for their own children, because their own children are not performing particularly well compared to students overseas. They're doing better than students in,
so
in
our
big cities.
complacency is not well founded.
Right, exactly. No, there are pockets of excellence. There are places where student achievement is really spectacular, but they're pretty hard to find, and they're in some districts that are remarkably small, and so there just aren't very many refuges from dysfunctional school systems. And interestingly, a number of these high-achieving districts are in rural areas where the population is very small and wouldn't be a refuge for people moving out of the city into suburbs, and a number of them are charter schools. As it turns out, a number of states treat charter schools as if they were school districts, and if they do so, they're contained in our data set. Of the top 20 school districts that we observe in our data set, 7 of them are actually charter schools.
Well, actually, I couldn't help but notice when I looked at your graph here with the top scoring districts down here, and as you say, a number of them are charter schools. One of them jumped out at me, Roxbury Prep Charter School in Massachusetts. It turns out I visited that school, spent the better part of a day there back in 2004, and what I saw was really quite a remarkable school. It went from, like, I don't know, 7:15 in the morning to 4:15 in the afternoon, something like that, so tutoring, and it was really a very, very impressive operation. It was entirely 100% black and Hispanic, and 2/3 free and reduced lunch, and mostly single parent families, and so on and so forth. So what I saw with my eyes, sitting through a chemistry class at 4 o'clock in the afternoon there, matched what your numbers say. So you got...
Well, and it's a very encouraging story because it shows that we can do better, right? That we're somehow not constrained to have the achievement that we have. We could do better even in suburbia. So, I mean, a number of the kind of famous suburbs that we could list that are really doing rather...
well, this one, the one I grew up in, is here. It's Montgomery County, Maryland. And at that time, more years ago than I would care to admit, it was considered one of the top school districts in the country. Probably still is in many ways. And it's ranked right in the middle, 50th percentile. Average kid there, 50th percentile compared to our international rivals.
Right. This is in math achievement as of 2007. Montgomery County, the average Montgomery County student is doing no better than the average student in one of these 25 developed countries. And again, these are some of our most affluent students. Beverly Hills, California is at the 53rd percentile in math. Grosse Pointe, Michigan at the 56th percentile. I mean, this is kind of all over the country. You can list kind of famously affluent suburbs. Shaker Heights, Ohio is at the 50th percentile. And it's troubling because I think that people assume that if they move out to the suburbs, they're getting a quality education for their children, and they're reinforced in this belief by state accountability results that show that they're doing better than the rest of the state, better than the city, so they think things are fine. But the real comparison is overseas, because if they want their children to have the same standard of living that they enjoy, they'll have to compete for top-paying jobs with students all over the world.
Well, it's not even just in the jobs, it's even in the grad schools. Okay, so I'm a product of Montgomery County, Maryland, pretty good in math, went to one of the top grad programs in economics, and today I don't think I could get in because it's all foreign students.
Right. Well, and I should emphasize that we really focus on the math results in the article, but one can find the reading results also on our website. We didn't emphasize those as much, even though they're a little bit more flattering to us, the reading results. But the reason is that it's a little bit harder to make reading comparisons across countries because of cultural differences and language differences, that we're not sure that reading passages are equally hard, for example. But also reading results are less predictive of economic success than our math results. And so that's really why we focus on the math results.
Let me just ask you a couple more questions here. There was some earlier work along these lines that I think you've built on or extended. Do you want to?
Sure, yeah. This is by no means a completely original work. In particular, Rick Hanishek, Paul Peterson, and Ludger Vosman have come out with 2 reports now where they similarly translate international tests into U.S. tests, but they only bring it down to the state level. And then within states, they look at the subset of students who are white, whose parents went to college, to show that even our advantaged students in each state are not performing very well compared to students overseas. The only problem with those analyses, and why we thought it was so important to extend the analysis all the way down to the school district level, is that people rationalize the results and think that you must be describing something that's going on somewhere else.
Right.
And the thing that we've done here is that we name your town, right? If you name results, if you describe the results for where people live, then there's no rationalizing it as saying, well, that must be somewhere else.
Right.
This is an issue that's occurring right where people live, and they can look up their own districts and see the results, and they can look up the results for other districts that they're curious about, and see that this is not someone else's problem. This is our own problem.
So why don't we close this off by having you tell our viewers once again how they can do just that.
Sure. Yeah, the results are...
If they want to get depressed,
right?
How do they do this?
You know, it's not all depressed. I mean, there are these pockets of excellence out there, just not nearly enough of them. So the results are all at www.globalreportcard.org. It's a nice interactive website with all the results, with the data fully downloadable. And this is something that we'll be updating periodically with additional years worth of information, but also adding some additional features over time.
Well, congratulations on a very interesting and successful launch to this project, and we look forward to further developments.
Great. Well, thank you very much.